I didn't know it yet, but the moment I stopped for that abandoned Ford Fusion, I walked straight into the most dangerous night of my career.
Why did you stop? You should not have stopped.
I should have died that night. Every time I think back on it, that's the first truth that hits me. I wasn't supposed to walk away from what happened in the Mojave Desert, and maybe that's why the memory still refuses to leave me alone. When the road is quiet and my headlights stretch across another lonely stretch of highway, the scene comes back sharp, cold, and terrifyingly clear. I had been hauling freight across the Southwest for over a decade, long enough to know every curve of the Mojave the way a sailor knows the stars. But that night, something felt different the moment I crossed into the desert's open throat. The air was too still, the darkness too heavy, like the world was holding its breath for something it didn't want to see. The company had assigned me another overnight haul to Arizona. I didn't complain. Money had been tight, and driving nights meant extra pay. And besides, I've always believed that fear only had the power you were willing to give it, but that belief didn't last long. I remember glancing at my dashboard clock, 3:17 a.m., the kind of hour where the road feels endless and the mind starts to wander into places best left alone. My headlights were dimmer than they should have been. Another repair I'd postponed because I thought I could make do. The desert swallowed the light, and I found myself squinting just to make out the worn highway lines. That was when everything changed. About a mile ahead, two faint lights flickered in the darkness. Headlights, but they weren't moving. They just hovered there, motionless, like a pair of eyes staring me down. I slowed slightly, leaning forward to get a better look, and the shape of a red sedan slowly materialized. A new model, clean, too clean for a place like this. It was stopped dead center in the middle of the road, hazard lights blinking in a slow, eerie rhythm. My first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion followed by that trucker instinct that tells you when something is going to go wrong. But the detail that froze me wasn't the flashing hazards. It was the passenger door, wide open, almost waiting for someone to climb out or climb back in. I slammed on the brakes harder than I meant to. The semi skidded and groaned, stopping just feet from the bumper of the abandoned car. My heart thudded once, hard, then held steady in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. No movement, no voices, no shadows shifting inside, just empty space and a silence thick enough to suffocate. I killed the engine and listened. Nothing. No wind, no animals, not even the soft hum of insects you normally hear out here. The Mojave had never been this quiet. A part of me said to keep driving, pretend I never saw it. But another part, the part that's carried me through years on the road, said I couldn't just leave someone behind. Maybe it was a family stranded in the dark. Maybe someone was hurt. And maybe, just maybe, stopping here was the last thing I should do. Still, I climbed down from the cab. The gravel crunched under my boots, a lonely sound swallowed quickly by the oppressive stillness. My breath formed a faint cloud in front of me. Even though the desert wasn't cold enough for that, I tried to ignore it. The car looked brand new, like it had rolled straight out of a dealership lot. But when I leaned in through the open passenger door, the pristine interior made my stomach tighten. It was too perfect. No bags, no drinks, no receipts, no signs a human being had ever sat inside, except for one thing, a small plush toy lying on the floor mat. A kid's toy, a faded little dinosaur with a stitched-on smile. I picked it up, and for the first time that night, fear slid under my ribs like a cold blade. I called out into the desert. No response. I circled the car. No footprints, no tire tracks, nothing disturbed, as if the car had just appeared. My eyes kept darting to the darkness beyond my truck's headlights. And that's when I saw it. A shadow. Not a shape, just a movement. a suggestion of someone standing just far enough to blend into the desert night. Then it shifted again, slow and deliberate, watching me. My instincts screamed at me to go, but I forced myself to check one last thing. The trunk. It was slightly ajar. I reached for it. Locked. A cold realization crept in. The keys were still in the ignition. I shouldn't have gone back for them. Every part of me knew that, but curiosity or something deeper drove me forward. I grabbed the keys, returned to the trunk, and slowly turned the lock. The click echoed like a gunshot. The trunk creaked open. Inside were 3 large heavy bags, not like grocery bags. Thick, black bags, industrial grade, the kind used to dispose of things you never want found. Next to them sat a broken radio transceiver, its metal casing dented, the wires torn. When I touched it, the device was warm, as if someone had been using it moments before I arrived. That's when the gunshot rang out. The sound ripped through the night, so close and so loud that I felt the bullet's shockwave before I heard it. I stumbled backward, slamming against the bumper, heart thundering. A voice followed, raspy, gravelly. Hey, not angry, not crazed, urgent. I didn't look. I ran. The desert floor blurred beneath my boots as I sprinted to the truck. I jumped inside, turned the key, and prayed. The engine sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. Relief flooded me until I looked in the mirror. A man stood behind the car, short, stocky, wild red hair tangled around his face, clothes filthy, left hand gripping a small shovel, right hand holding an old hunting rifle. His eyes met mine. He looked terrified. He dropped the shovel and waved both arms as if trying to warn me about something behind me, not about himself. His mouth moved fast, shouting something I couldn't hear, but I wasn't staying. Not here, not with those bags, not with that shadow still shifting in the darkness. I slammed the truck into gear and tore down the highway, adrenaline turning my veins electric. In the mirror, I saw the red-haired man run after me for a few desperate seconds before turning back toward the abandoned car. I still don't know if he was the danger that night, or the only one trying to save me from it. Before we continue with the rest of the story, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more real-life horror stories to light, and it means the world to us as we continue creating new videos every week. I've driven through more states than I can count, across highways that stretch longer than some people's patience, but only one place ever made me feel like the world around me had shifted, like reality itself had slipped out of place. People think the road is dangerous because of drunks, breakdowns, storms, or lonely nights that make you question your sanity. But the truth is, sometimes the road takes you somewhere you were never meant to be. My name is Evan Hale. I've only been trucking for a couple years, still a rookie compared to the veterans out there. But I'm no stranger to tough nights, tight schedules, and the creeping exhaustion that settles into your bones on a long haul. That night, though it wasn't exhaustion, it was something worse, something that still makes my skin crawl every time I pass an unmarked service road. I had been hauling a load from southern New Jersey toward Lafayette, Indiana. It wasn't my longest trip, but running overnight meant the roads were empty, too empty. When it's just you, your dashboard glow, and the rhythmic hum of tires on asphalt, your mind starts leaning into places it normally wouldn't. Some drivers find comfort in the solitude. Others drown it out with music or radio talk shows. Me? I was just hoping for a Red Bull. Around the halfway point, my eyelids felt heavier than steel. I reached for the console, where I always kept a few cans, but I'd forgotten to restock. My stomach twisted at that realization. Fatigue is a slow killer on the highway. You don't notice it until your mind starts drifting into dark corners. So even though I hated the idea of stopping in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have a choice. I scanned the roadside for any sign of life. A gas station, a vending machine, a light, anything. That's when I saw it. On the right side of the highway was a dimly lit wooden sign, weathered and barely hanging from its post. It said, "Open," but most of the letters had faded into a ghostly outline. Behind it, a small building sat, bathed in flickering yellow light. A gas station, sort of. The pumps were old, rusted, and clearly unusable, but the convenience store door was open, a soft glow spilling into the gravel lot like it was waiting just for me. I pulled in, but something felt off. There were no cars outside, no sound except a faint buzz from the dying exterior lights. Still, exhaustion pushed me forward. I needed a drink, 5 minutes max, then I'd be on my way. The moment I opened the door, the air hit me stale, dead, unmoving. The kind of air that belonged in a place abandoned years ago. The faint creak of the hinges echoed like a warning. The store was gutted. Empty shelves lined the walls, warped and dusty. Boxes sat half-crushed on the floor. It felt like stepping into a memory rather than a building. I muttered to myself, "Great," and turned to leave. But then I saw a faint glow coming from the back room. Every instinct told me to ignore it, but curiosity and desperation for something to keep me awake nudged me forward. The hallway to the back room felt colder than the rest of the store. Not refrigerator cold, more like the air had never been disturbed. I hesitated, breathing slow, then pushed the door open. There it was. A single refrigerator stood against the far wall, humming softly. Its light glowed like a beacon in the dark. It looked brand new, out of place in a store that had clearly been abandoned for years. And for a brief moment, hope returned. I walked toward it, pulled open the door. Nothing, not a single can, not a bottle, not even a shelf. Just an empty metal shell, frosted around the edges, the light inside flickering. I let out a short laugh, half frustration, half disbelief, and that's when I heard it. A clatter from the main room. I froze, breath catching in my throat. It wasn't loud, just enough to tell me I wasn't alone. I stayed still, listening for footsteps, voices, anything, but silence settled over the store again like a thick blanket. I made my way back toward the main area. That's when I noticed the door. I could have sworn I had left it halfway shut, but now it was wide open, not blown open, carefully opened, as if someone had eased it toward the wall and was now waiting for me to step through. I glanced behind me, then quickened my pace, crossing the store in long strides. The air felt colder, and for the first time since I stepped inside, I realized I couldn't hear the refrigerator humming anymore. I stepped outside, heart pounding. Gravel crunched loudly beneath my boots, echoing more than they should have. I climbed into the truck, locked the doors, and tried to shake it off. Empty stores happen. Weird buildings happen. It's the road. Not everything makes sense. I pulled forward, rolling slowly toward the exit. But something made me check my mirrors. The store's main door, which I had left open not 20 seconds earlier, was now closed, completely shut. I swallowed hard, trying to reason with myself. Maybe the wind, maybe a draft, but the air inside had been still, dead, still, fine. Enough. Time to go. I turned onto the highway. My headlights cut through the darkness in a thin beam, and I tried to focus on the road ahead, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was behind me, following me, watching. The rearview mirror became my enemy. I checked it every few seconds, and then, at the edge of my vision, movement. A figure, standing near the store, just a faint shape in the dark, still as stone, watching my truck roll away. My blood ran cold. I pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing the engine past where it needed to be. The night blurred around me, but the fear didn't fade. It grew heavier, thick as fog. I didn't stop again until I reached the next town 30 miles down. A real store, with real lights, real people, and real noise. I stumbled inside, grabbed a soda, chugged it like I had been underwater, then walked back to my truck with shaky hands. Before pulling out, I checked my phone. Out of curiosity and maybe dread, I searched the name of the exit where I'd stopped. Nothing came up. No businesses. No gas stations. No convenience stores. When I tried map view, the area was just an empty patch of land. Desert. No buildings. No roads leading off the highway. But here's the part that still wakes me up some nights. The timestamp on my truck's dash cam shows everything. The gravel lot, the glowing lights, the open door, but the building itself? The building never appears. Only darkness. And an empty stretch of desert where a store never should have been. I didn't imagine it. I didn't hallucinate it. The dashcam audio caught the creaking of the door, the clatter, the hum of the impossible refrigerator, but not the store. And that's when I understood. Some places don't want to be found, and some places find you anyway. I've spent the last 15 years behind the wheel of a semi, crossing more deserts, mountains, and lonely stretches of road than most people will see in a lifetime. I've always believed the road had a personality of its own, moods, temper, secrets. But the stretch of highway near mile marker 47, that place didn't feel alive. It felt aware, and whatever was out there that night knew my name long before I ever passed through. My name is Marcus Leone. I was hauling a load of medical supplies through the southwest, heading toward a hospital outside Santa Fe. It was the kind of winter night where the cold burrows into your bones, deep enough to make your breath feel heavier, sharper. But inside my cab, everything was warm. The hum of the heater, the glow of the dashboard, the low comfort of the road I thought I knew. But what I didn't know was that the silence creeping in around me wasn't natural. It wasn't just another quiet night. It was the beginning of something I still can't explain. Around midnight, the world went still. No other vehicles, no wind, no static on the radio. Not even a distant animal cry. That's unusual for the desert. People think it's empty. But the desert is alive, always shifting, humming, breathing in its own way. But that night, it was as if the land had stopped breathing altogether. At first, I blamed my nerves. My mind had been messy lately. Divorce papers, hospital bills for my father, the weight of working too many miles with too little rest. Loneliness crawls into the cab with you, especially in the winter, especially when the only light on the highway comes from your own truck. I shook it off until I saw the first figure. It stood near the roadside, just beyond the reach of my headlights. Tall, thin, completely motionless. Its outline almost blended with the darkness, but not enough for my eyes to mistake it. It was there, watching. I slowed a little. Not because I wanted to help. Something in my chest tightened hard enough to warn me that stopping would be a mistake, but because part of me needed to understand what I was looking at. I couldn't make out a face, couldn't tell if it was a man or something pretending to be one. I passed it without stopping. I tried to convince myself it was a hitchhiker, just a person, but that didn't explain the way it stood too still, like its feet weren't touching the ground. And just when I thought the worst was behind me, my headlights flickered, once, twice, then steadied again. My hands tightened around the wheel. I'd driven through blackouts before. This wasn't that. This felt deliberate, targeted. I didn't want to check the mirror, but I did. The figure was behind me, not running, not walking, just there again, standing by the roadside as if it had been waiting for me to pass. That's when my pulse kicked into full panic. I pressed harder on the accelerator, keeping my eyes on the road, but every few seconds movement flickered in my peripherals. Shadows stretching where shadows shouldn't be, shapes shifting along the dirt just outside the glow of my headlights. Another figure appeared on the right, Then another on the left, and another, keeping pace with my truck at a distance no human could manage. I don't scare easy. I've faced blizzards, road rage, blown tires at 80 miles per hour. But this was different. This fear wasn't logical. It was instinctive, primeval, the kind that crawls up the spine and settles behind your teeth. My heart hammered. The figures weren't chasing me. They were herding me. The wind picked up then violently, suddenly, as if the world had been silent until something decided it was time to wake up. But what froze the blood in my veins wasn't the wind. It was the whisper carried in it. Marcus. I almost slammed the brakes right there. Hearing your name whispered across an empty desert, that's not something the mind shakes off quickly. My mouth went dry. My hands trembled on the wheel. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Marcus, let us in. I slapped the radio on, desperate for noise, static, anything to drown out that voice. But the speakers only emitted a soft hum, like breath on glass. Then my truck shut off. Everything, the engine, the lights, the radio, the dashboard, dead. The truck rolled to a slow stop, leaving me in a darkness so complete it felt like someone had draped a thick cloth over my eyes. My breath fogged the cold air as I tried the ignition again. Nothing. A tap sounded against the passenger window. Soft, rhythmic, intentional. I forced myself to look. A face stared back at me through the glass. Not a normal face. Not human. Its skin was pale like candle wax left too long in the cold. Its eyes were hollow, deep, dark, empty pits. And its mouth, stretched, too wide, split into a grin that wasn't a grin at all. I froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then it vanished, gone, as if it had never been there. My truck jolted as the engine suddenly roared back to life, headlights blasting a path through the night. The dashboard lit up. Everything returned with violent force. I didn't question it. I slammed the truck into gear, tires skidding as I launched forward. But as I pulled away, one final figure stood directly in the center of the highway ahead. It wore a paramedic jacket, the exact same logo as the medical supply company I was hauling for. Then, in the split second before my headlights washed over it, the figure lifted its hand, not to stop me, but almost as a salute, and then it faded, dissolving into the cold desert air like smoke. Hours later, when I reached a crowded truck stop, I stumbled inside with trembling legs. The fear clung to me like frost. One of the older truckers noticed my state and offered me coffee. When I told him what happened, the color drained from his face. He knew mile marker 47. 12 years earlier, an ambulance en route to a rural hospital crashed there during a winter storm. 3 paramedics died. Their bodies weren't recovered for 2 days because of the conditions. Some drivers claim they still see silhouettes on the roadside around this time of year. But no one had ever heard the whispers. I didn't go back to that stretch of highway for months. But more importantly, that night redefined something in me. Fear didn't mean I was weak. It meant I still had something worth protecting. Something inside me still fought to stay alive. Even when the world tried to convince me I was already gone, I still deliver medical supplies, still drive through lonely places. But I don't fear the road the way I used to. I respect it, because some miles carry more than asphalt. Some carry memories, stories, echoes of people who never made it home. And mile marker 47, that place carries all 3. When you listen to stories like these, it's easy to think they're just about fear. Shadows on the roadside, figures watching from the dark, empty stores that shouldn't exist. But the truth is, these stories are really about the people behind the wheel. The men and women driving through the places most of us will never see, at hours most of us will never experience, carrying the weight of miles that feel endless. Out there on the open road, fear doesn't always come in the shape of monsters or strangers. Sometimes it shows up in quieter ways, in the moments when the world goes silent, and you realize just how alone you really are. But those same moments also reveal something else, something we don't talk about enough. Courage, the kind that doesn't come from strength or confidence, but from choosing to keep going, even when the night feels darker than anything you've ever known. Daniel, Evan, Marcus, 3 truckers with 3 very different stories. Yet every one of them faced something most of us would turn back from. But they didn't. They kept driving. They kept fighting. They kept moving toward the next mile marker, the next sunrise, the next chance to make it home. And maybe that's why the road whispers to some people and not to others. Maybe it knows who will listen. Maybe it knows who will survive it. The things they saw, the silent figures, the impossible store, the man in the desert who wasn't trying to hurt anybody, they stay with you. Not because they were terrifying, but because they remind you that the world is bigger, stranger, and more fragile than we like to believe. But the most haunting part? Every trucker knows these stories aren't rare. Every driver has a night they don't talk about, a moment when something on the road changed them forever. And maybe the reason these encounters happen at all is because the road has a way of revealing what's inside us. Our fears, our regrets, our hopes, the memories we try to outrun, the people we wish we could have saved, the voices we still hear long after the engine shuts off. Some shadows on the highway are real, others are reminders, and some are warnings. But if there's one thing these stories prove, it's that even in the darkest places, on the loneliest stretches of desert, under the coldest night sky, you are never completely powerless. There is always a part of you capable of pushing forward, a part that refuses to stop, a part that chooses to live. Because sometimes surviving the night isn't about outdriving whatever's behind you. It's about not letting the darkness inside you win. So the next time you're out late, staring down an empty highway, remember this: the road has taken countless souls, but it has also carried countless survivors. And the difference between the two is the courage to keep going. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay sharp, and wherever the night takes you, may you always find your way back to the light.